Alright, this is going to be a long video. Hello everyone. This is a video unlike any other video on my channel, and a video that has been in the works for almost a year now. A video where I write down every single movie that I've watched this year and rank them from best to worst. A tier being the best and F tier being the worst. Now, a couple of ground rules before we start. Number 1, short films will not be included in this video. Number 2, documentaries and comedy shows will be put on here. And number 3, it does not need to be a movie that I've watched for the first time. Just as long as I've watched it in 2023, it'll be covered. Anyway, let's jump in. Our first movie is Turning Red. Okay, so if you've seen at least 4 of my videos, you know that one of my favorite movies is Turning Red. So of course this is an immediate A-tier movie. Everything about this movie is great. The animation, the story, the characters, the songs, everything. So yeah, this is our first movie and it's going on the A-tier list. Next up is Megan. Okay, another A-tier movie. This was actually the first movie that I watched in theaters this year, but anyway, this is one of my favorite films. I love the story and I love the relationship between Gemma and Katie. I love how jumpy the movie is, and of course, the dance. Anyway, the only thing I'm not a fan of is the lack of on-screen kills. Seriously, only like 1 kill is actually on screen and they're not even that bloody. But anyway, moving on. Knock at the Cabin. Another A-tier movie. The relationship between the characters and the suspense is fantastic. I really like how the characters, especially Leonard, are actually nice people. Except for, Redmond. But anyway, the ending as well is really good. Anyway, moving on. Titanic 3D. Now I would like to say, this is not normal Titanic. This is Titanic, but in 3D. Yeah, I saw this in the cinemas as it was the 25th anniversary of the film, so they re-released it in 3D or something. And the film is still good. In 3D doesn't really change my mind. It was cool at parts, but I got like the seat that was more on the side, so I guess it wasn't really as good as it could have been. But anyway, the film's still good, so I'm gonna put it at a B tier. The Addams Family. Okay, this movie really isn't that good. The story is very mid, and the designs on most of the characters look like something out of hell. The only enjoyable parts of this movie are scenes with Uncle Fester and Gomez. So yeah, this is a D tier film. Following the Addams Family, we have the Addams Family 2. Okay, our first F tier film. This movie is a piece of junk. Remember how I said the only enjoyable parts of the first film were Gomez and Uncle Fester? Well, this movie just makes them annoying and unlikable, just like the rest of the crew. Then there's the boring side plot about Wednesday not being in Addams, which they literally confirmed as Wednesday did a DNA test and confirmed she's not a part of the Addams family, which, did they ever find a workaround to that? Because that sounds like something that could destroy the series. But anyway, this is an F tier film, without a doubt. Scream. Okay, this movie is great and a classic. However, there is one annoying character that ruins it a bit for me. Stu Marker. Seriously, how do people like this guy? He's the most annoying character in the film. Anyway, other than that, the film had a good story and some other good characters, so B tier film. Scream 5. Okay, this film is good, however, 90% of the characters are annoying as hell, especially this chick. However, the film makes up for it with the stabs. The stabs actually look real as if they were stabbing people on set. Anyway, this is a C tier film. Scream 6. Okay, this film was better than 5 and could have been on a B or A tier. But there is one character that ruins it all. Mindy. Seriously, she serves no purpose to the actual film at all. The only thing she does is sit there and accuse people of being the serial killer. She's not even there for the final fight. Worst part is that she could have been killed off multiple times. 2 times in fact. 3 if you want to include that scene from Scream 5. But still, she could have died 3 different times. But no, she's important to the film for some reason. If or when they make a Scream 7, Mindy better be killed off, bro. I hate her so much. C tier film. Next up is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Alrighty then. This film is fantastic and absolutely hilarious. I have watched this film so many times over the course of 8 years, and it still never fails to make me laugh. Definitely an A-tier movie. Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. The sequel to Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and this one is just as funny, if not more funnier than the original. Seriously, if you don't find at least one scene in either of these films funny, you don't have a sense of humor. A-tier film, 100%. Yes, day. Okay, this movie is bad. You guys know those weird live-action TV shows on Nickelodeon without a laugh soundtrack that would always come on after the good shows like SpongeBob and Henry Danger? For me, it was shows like Big Time Russian on Fabulous, you know, those weird batch of TV shows. This is what this movie feels like. Not only that, but the film's just really boring, and there's also the fact that it's just a family-friendly version of the movie Yes Man. So yeah, F-tier movie. Paranormal Activity 1. Okay, this is probably a B-tier film, because the first half of the movie is pretty boring with the occasional sound in the background, but the film really picks up towards the end, so yeah. Paranormal Activity 3. Okay, this film is similar to the first, as it's kind of boring at the start, but as we progress it starts getting better and better, so yeah, another B-tier movie. The Bad Guys. This film was great, action-packed and really enjoyable. The characters are also great, which I could say the same about the Christmas special. Yeah, you can tell I haven't watched these films in a while, as well. I watched these at the start of the year, and I just started writing the script in July, so yeah, my descriptions are a bit vague, but anyway, A-tier film. Rango. Okay, this film is great. I'm sure we've all seen those clips of Rango saying,
"It only takes one bullet."
And the movie's animation looks extremely good for a film made in 2011. Also, I love the cowboy theme, I love western flicks, but anyway, A-tier film. Puss in Boots. Okay, this is probably a C-tier film, as a lot of the scenes in the film are kind of boring, but a couple scenes are quite entertaining, especially the ones with Humpty in them. Minions: Rise of Gru. Okay, I'm going to tick off a lot of people. I absolutely hate this film. Hearing Steve Carell's high-pitched voice is the most annoying thing in the world. Almost Fred levels annoying. I also hate the Minions. Not hate, but I hate how much they need to be in this movie. This is why Despicable Me 1 is the best Despicable Me movie, as the Minions are not the entire film. And while yeah, I should expect that from a film called Minions, I still think the Minions should be the same from the first film. Then there's the fact that this film is a freaking eyesore. It looks like they turned up the saturation to the max. I also hate how everything looks so realistic, except for the characters. The last thing I hate is that they do everything in their power to make sure that this film is set in the 70s. I think the producers just searched 70s on Google and just based everything on that. Seriously, you could take any frame from this film and you'd be able to tell that it's set in the 70s. F-tier film. Ricky Gervais Supernature. Okay, this is a B-tier comedy show. Don't get me wrong, the jokes are absolutely hilarious, but once you've heard them, you won't really laugh as hard unless you go a couple months without hearing them and go back and watch it. Kevin Hart, I'm a Grown Little Man. This comedy show is probably a D tier, as the jokes aren't as funny, and I prefer Kevin Hart just being stupid rather than telling jokes. 127 Hours. This is definitely an A tier movie. The fact that the director managed to make a man stuck in a canyon for 7 days entertaining is insane. Aaron's story is also really inspiring, and James Franco did a really good job at portraying him. And the arm scene is also really cool. The loud sound that occurs when he pulls on the vein is pretty realistic, and the music as well is really good. Honey, I Blew Up the Kids. Honestly, I would give this a B tier because some parts of the film are pretty boring and the CGI is pretty dodgy at some parts, even though this film was released in the 90s. However, the film does have its good parts and the acting is very good, especially from Rick Moranis. Anyway, moving on. The Conjuring. Okay, automatic A tier film. Just like Ace Ventura, I've watched this film for years and it still always scares me. The jump scares are just right, and the fact that this film is based on true events as well makes it all the more scarier. Insidious Chapter 2. Okay, I've seen Insidious 1 and Insidious 4. Don't ask me why I went from 1 to 4, but anyway, those two films are great, scary and entertaining. But Chapter 2 is just bad. The film is pretty boring and most of the jump scares were ones that I was expecting. In fact, this movie was so boring that I literally fell asleep during this movie. Keep in mind, this was made by the same person who directed the Conjuring films, the ones that I just praised as being terrifying. So yeah. Anyway, this is an E tier film. The only reason it isn't an F tier was because there was actually one good jump scare that caught me.
Don't you dare!
Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Okay, so I actually had no interest in watching this movie, but I had to because the Wi-Fi was down on my place and I could only watch what was on the channels, and Terminator 2 was on there, and you're also going to see the following two movies were also on the channels. But anyway, this movie was really good. It was action-packed, really enjoyable, and not what I was expecting. A-tier film. Detective Pikachu. Okay, this is probably a C-tier film, as most parts were pretty boring, and in my opinion, the only good parts were the battles. So anyway, moving on. E.T. A classic movie that I had to watch because of the Wi-Fi thing. But anyway, I watched this as a kid, and I guess it's better now rewatching it. I don't remember it being this good. But anyway, A-tier film. X. Not to be confused with the social networking platform, this film's about sex. Yeah, I watched this film and I kinda regret it. This is probably a C-tier film, as you know, there's a bit too much sex scene going on in the movie, but the film does have some very good kills. Sausage Party. Okay, I watched this film a while ago and it occurs to me now what a lot of the racial jokes mean, like the Native American drinks being driven out of their aisle, the Canadian beer constantly apologizing, and the Mexican products being called illegal products. But anyway, this is a B-tier film, as a lot of scenes are pretty funny and enjoyable, but some parts are kind of boring. The Martian. Okay, this is an F-tier film. Not because it's bad or anything, but I just wanted to play some games and have something going on in the background, so I played this movie. So whether or not it even should be on here is up to you. But anyway, it probably actually is a good film, but I didn't pay attention to it. Jurassic Park. Okay, I swear every time I watch a Jurassic Park film, I always have some sort of dream about dinosaurs. But anyway, it's still a really good movie. A-tier film, good story, good characters. Moving on. Bo Burnham Make Happy. Alright, a musical comedy show on this list. And it's a B tier. Some jokes aren't funny, but the songs make up for that. Dumb and Dumber. Just like Ace Ventura, this film never fails to make me laugh, especially the scenes in Aspen. So anyway, A-tier film. A Million Ways to Die in the West. There is a lot of cowboy films on this list, but anyway, this would have to be a B tier, as some scenes were funny, but others were just weird. But anyway, moving on. The Fallout. Okay, this is definitely an A-tier film. I already said how good this movie was in my 1000 subscriber special, but anyway, I really like how the film follows Vad's traumatic story. Moving on. Note. Bloody hell, this movie was great. Definitely an A-tier film. While the film did not have the best jump scares, it had great suspenseful scenes, and the ending as well is so freaking good. I love it when movies end with just enough information that you know what just happened and what might happen next, but doesn't show you what happens next? The Castle. Bloody hell, mate, this was a good bloody film. Alright, enough with the over-exaggerated Aussie accent. Okay, this is an A-tier film. It had a great story, and honestly, in a lot of movies, the Aussie accent is really never on point, but this one is perfect. The Suicide Squad. Okay, I just want to make this clear. This is the Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad. This is the one from 2021. Anyway, this film is great. A lot of scenes, especially the scenes with King Shark, are hilarious. The action scenes are bloody awesome, and I also like how unnecessarily gory the kills are. It's honestly kind of sad how underrated this film is. If you haven't seen it already, you should watch it. A-tier film. Also, the trailer was absolutely amazing. Jackass 3.5, the unrated movie. Okay, this is a B-tier film. A lot of scenes were funny and disgusting. Even though this wasn't the best Jackass movie, it was definitely worth the watch. That Sugar film. Remember that scene in Death to 2021 when Diane Morgan was talking about all those food documentaries ruining her appetite? Yeah, this is pretty much how I felt watching this film. This is just a C-tier film. Not the best, not the worst. Moving on. The Interview. Okay, this is probably a C-tier film, as everything before we go to North Korea and everything after we leave North Korea is pretty boring, but when we're actually in North Korea, it's pretty funny. And Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un's death is pretty cool and hilarious at the same time. Full Blood Mall Cop. Okay, this is definitely an A-tier film. A lot of the scenes in this movie are bloody hilarious, and the mall fight scenes are also a mix of cool and funny. So anyway, moving on. Pete Davidson, Alive from New York. Okay, I love Pete Davidson, and his comedy show Alive from New York is hilarious. Pete's accent makes the jokes even better. A-tier comedy show. Gallipoli. Okay, this is an A-tier film. The movie does a good job depicting what happened in World War I. This is definitely a good movie to watch if you're bored. The Impossible. This is a B-tier film. The only reason it isn't on an A-tier is because they showed a dead dog. Like, I know that a dog would survive this fight, but did you have to show it? Anyway, I really enjoyed the film, and the story as well is really inspiring, and great acting as well. Moving on. Chronicle. Okay, this is a fantastic movie. Definitely an A-tier movie. I love the handheld camera style, something that isn't really common in these types of movies. I love films where you can kind of feel bad and somewhat root for the main villain, as Andrew is abused, bullied, and his mother is dying. And when you see the bully and the dad get what they deserve, you can't help but root for Andrew a little bit. Anyway, if you haven't seen this movie, you should definitely watch it. Murder Mystery 2. Okay, I didn't watch this movie because I wanted to. I watched it because Mr. Beast said on his Insta to go watch the movie, and I thought that Mr. Beast would make some sort of surprise appearance in that movie, which is why I watched it. And it was still a good movie. Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston is a strangely good duo. B-tier film. Super Size Me. The movie that every kid in PE watched at least once, and that's the same here for me. Anyway, I have nothing good to say about the movie, but nothing bad to say either, so C-tier film. Euro Trip. Just so you guys know, my friends forced me to watch this movie. Anyways, this is probably an E-tier film. A lot of the film is just boring and the jokes aren't funny, and there's way too much unnecessary nudity in the film. A lot of the jokes just feel forced, like here, this kid's doing the Sig Heil. Why? Because he's German. There's no build-up to the joke, it's just a German kid doing the Sig Heil. The only reason this isn't on an F tier is because this one scene was pretty funny.
Cooper, do not hate me. I am familiar with over 600 dance moves and I am programmed to get...
Super Mario Bros. Movie. Okay, I cannot talk much about this film, otherwise I'll get sued by Nintendo. Anyway, it's a good film with a great cast, A-tier film. Anyway, we are now moving on to the Final Destination franchise. Final Destination. So the reason why I watch these movies is because of my Final Destination iceberg, where I went back and rewatched the entire series. So if you haven't seen that video, go and watch it. Anyway, the first film is definitely the best out of the franchise. While yeah, it did not have the best kills, at least it had no crappy CGI, bad acting, or trashy characters. Just a good start to a film franchise. A-tier film. Final Destination 2. The second film in the Final Destination franchise, and just like the first one, is one of the best. The film had a lot of good-looking practical effects, especially the highway crash, which, amazingly, only used CGI for the logs. Everything else was practical. This movie also had better and more creative kills, so yeah, A-tier movie. Final Destination 3. Okay, so this is where the Final Destination franchise started to go downhill. The CGI is pretty bad at some points, and the characters become more unlikable, and some of their acting is just kinda trash. This is probably a C-tier movie. Final Destination 4. This is the worst out of the Final Destination franchise. The characters are terrible, the CGI is pretty bad, the acting is so mid it's unbelievable. The only good part of this movie is the kills. Really good, gory and creative kills, even if they are ruined by the CGI and how unrealistic some of them are. Final Destination 5. Okay, so this is where the film started to pick up in quality a little bit. The acting is still pretty mid, however, the story, characters and CGI do pick up. However, there is one thing that I can't help but notice. The film doesn't feel like a Final Destination film. I'm not sure if it's the way it's shot or if it's the settings, but it doesn't feel like a Final Destination movie. Then there's the plane scene at the end where it's revealed that the movie is actually a prequel, which is a good reveal, but the plane takes longer to explode and looks like it's already out of the airport by the time it explodes, which is something we didn't see in the first movie. C-tier film. South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut. Oh boy, this movie is fantastic. For one, I love the fact that the movie is a musical, and a really dirty one at that. While we are on the topic of songs, the songs are really catchy. I cannot stop singing It's Easy MK, What Would Brian Boitano Do, and Carl's Mom. The comedy as well is really good, and that's something you should expect from South Park. A-tier film. Zombieland. Alright, I'm not a big fan of the zombie genre, but this one in my opinion is the best. For one, its comedy is really good, and, well, I just love comedies, and the characters are great, and each actor portrays them perfectly. A-tier film. Tomorrow When the War Began. A movie set in Australia, this one hits close to home. Anyway, the movie is pretty good, however some scenes aren't really that enjoyable, and really the only good parts are when the characters are in town fighting the enemy. C-tier film. Godzilla 2014. Kinda like Tomorrow When the War Began, some scenes in this movie aren't as enjoyable, and the only good scenes are when Godzilla is on screen, which is a lot. B-tier film. Johnny English. Bloody hell, this movie was funny. A lot of people would probably see Rowan Atkinson as Mr. Bean, but I will always see him as Johnny English. A lot of the scenes in this movie are funny, and also, I just love the faces that Johnny English pulls in this movie. A-tier film. Johnny English Reborn. This one isn't as enjoyable as the first one. I don't really find a lot of the humor good, and some scenes are not really that interesting, so I would put this at a D tier. Romeo and Juliet 1996. Okay, this film was actually very good. I like how the movie is set in modern times, which makes it more enjoyable for someone like me who doesn't like films set in the Middle Ages. Despite being set in modern times, the characters speak Shakespearean language, which can be pretty hard to understand at some parts, but you still roughly get what they're saying. A-tier film. Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. Oh boy, this one sucked. The movie's acting is so bad that it feels like that one episode of The Office, Threat Level Midnight, where they're all intentionally being bad actors. The camera quality is so friggin' bad, and I hate the way it's shot. The movie as well, just on its own, is terrible. F-tier film. No Country for Old Men. This film, however, is fantastic. The characters are so incredibly well portrayed, especially Anton Chigurh. While we're on the topic of Anton, he is the most intimidating character ever. Even though he doesn't look really scary, what he does in the film would terrify you. Also, the lack of music as well is really good. A-tier film. American Psycho. Another fantastic serial killer movie that I really like is American Psycho. The main reason I love this film is not just the story, but Patrick Bateman. He's just really cool in the way he's successful and how he takes care of himself, except for his psychotic and misogynic views. But other than that, it's a good movie. A-tier film. Candyman 2021. Okay, this is probably a D-tier film. Some of the CGI looks pretty bad, especially this scene here, where it looks like they use an SFM model. The plot is kind of boring, and the only redeeming part of this movie are some kills and the ending. The Unholy. Okay, so far the past couple of movies have been horror movies, however, this one is the last one, and it's the worst. The acting just doesn't feel right for a horror movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's good and all, but it just wouldn't belong in a horror movie. Most of the time you can expect when a jump scare will pop up, and the story is alright to an extent. E-tier film. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Okay, so I never really was a big fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, but this one was alright. Pretty good comedy and some really great action scenes. A-tier film. Ready Player One. Dang, I forgot how great this movie was. The action scenes are great, and I find myself unintentionally laughing at the weirdest of lines. The pop culture references as well are also very good. I love being able to spot random video game or movie characters in the background, and also the music, really good choice of 80s music. A-tier film. Chernobyl 1986. Just like some of the past movies on this list, the only enjoyable parts are when the action is taking place. Same for this movie. The only enjoyable parts of this film are when Chernobyl is on fire and such. Everything before and after is kind of boring. C-tier film. Flamin' Hot. Flamin' Hot? More like Flaming Cow! Okay, but seriously, this is a good film. The way it's shot and the acting and the mix of comedy and seriousness is really good. Definitely a good film worth watching, and the ending also made me shed a bit of a tear. While we're on the topic of tears, this one's an A tier. The Barbie movie. Yeah, I'm on Team Barbie. Oppenheimer looked boring and depressing. Movie about a guy who invented a bomb. Anyway, this is a seriously good film. Probably one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Really enjoyable, good acting, and recognizable cast. Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Will Ferrell, Michael Cera, John Cena. Great cast. A-tier film. Romeo and Juliet 2013. This was, in my opinion, worse than the 1996 version. A lot of scenes are kind of boring and the acting isn't too good. E-tier. Troll Hunters Rise of the Titans. Another movie that I forgot was really good. However, just like some of the other films, the only good scenes are when the monsters are attacking, which is a lot. The action and destruction as well is really good for an animated movie. B-tier film. Hellboy 2019. Okay, so I don't know why a lot of people hate this film. I have only seen one other Hellboy movie, so maybe I'm not in a position to say this, but I thought the film was pretty good. The comedy was funny as hell, haha, get it, hell, and the kills were good. And the action scenes were fantastic. A-tier film. Paranorman. Yet another film in which I forgot the greatness of. Paranorman was funny as. And for some reason I can't stop laughing at this scene. A-tier film. Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. I did not like this movie. This is why I'm a Marvel fan, because they actually make good movies. Well, they used to, but anyway. The action scenes are really underwhelming and most of the movie is boring, and Jesse Eisenberg is not a good Lex Luthor. F-tier movie. Ghostbusters 2016. Okay, I'm gonna tick a whole lot more people off now. I actually like this movie. Now you might be wondering, how can you like this movie but not like Minions Rise of Gru? Well, it's probably because I was never really a big fan of the original and I love Kristen Wiig and Kate McKinnon, alright? B-tier film. Rocky Horror Picture Show. Okay, out of all the films on this list, this one is the worst. The acting is so freaking bad and the characters are much worse, especially this character who has the most annoying voice in the world. The music is trash and all attempts of comedy are ruined. I found nothing in this movie enjoyable. Just for context, they re-released this movie in theaters for whatever reason and my cousins invited me to go, saying that I would love the movie. I did not love it. The only reason I went, well, one reason was because they're my cousins, and the second reason is because Rocky Horror Picture Show sounds like a great movie. But no, it's not even a horror. It's just a bunch of bloody gay monsters singing about stuff. I have never felt so much relief and happiness than the time I left that theater. F-tier film. Wrong Turn. When I initially saw that this film was on Netflix, I was excited. But when I watched it, I was disappointed. A lot of the film was boring and the acting was pretty mid at times, and no, the kills did not make up for it. The only enjoyable part of this movie is Chris, who is kinda cool. E-tier film. Boy. This is probably a D-tier film. Don't get me wrong, some jokes are pretty funny, but most of the film was pretty boring. Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, or as I like to call it, the Elton John playlist, is a really good film. I remember watching this when I was a kid, and I still really like it today. Also, Featherstone is a hilarious character. Some parts in the film, however, are a bit boring, so anyway, B-tier film. Amethyst Blue. Okay, I know this isn't technically a real film, but since this is a full-length animation and it's just fantastic, I thought I'd put it on here. This film was fantastic. The story was great, the voice actors did a really good job at impersonating the TF2 mercs, and the fact that the animation looks so good despite the fact it was made on decade-old software is amazing. A-tier film. The Wrong Missy. This film was strange, but still enjoyable. A lot of scenes were funny and unexpected, definitely an A-tier film. The Gentleman. Okay, this film was fantastic. The whole movie was incredibly funny, and there were tons of really funny parts. The film also had great acting and a great story. A-tier film. Dante's Peak. Oh boy, I used to be absolutely terrified of this film. But anyway, I was feeling nostalgic and decided to go back and watch this film. And yet, this film was still pretty good. The only problem I have with it is the pacing. It just kind of feels a bit too fast. B-tier film. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This movie still holds up pretty well. I love the utter randomness said by some of the characters as well as the way they say it. A-tier film. Cocaine Bear. This movie was not really what I was expecting. It was a pretty mid-tier film. The children were mostly annoying, and I don't like how unnecessarily gory some kills are. Like, why does every single character need to lose an arm or a leg? Also, I don't like how they killed off famous character actress Margot Martindale. However, some scenes are funny, and I do like David and his friend. D-tier film. Borat Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan. This movie is still very funny, or in other words, it's very nice. I could listen to Borat's voice for hours without getting annoyed. I also love how they fool around with the public. This film is definitely an A tier. The Nun 2. This movie isn't as good as the first one, but still sort of good. You can kind of expect when some jump scares are about to happen, like when the camera turns one way and then turns back and then boom, big scary jump scare. But other scenes are pretty good, but I would prefer the first Nun. C tier film. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Another movie that I forgot was really good. This movie had some great characters and some pretty funny scenes. The music is also really good as well. Good selection. Also, Kingpin's design is just hilarious. His massive body and his tiny head. I can't be the only one that finds that funny. A tier film. The Wolf of Wall Street. Okay, this movie dragged on for longer than it should have. Yeah, the movie did have its moments, especially at the start, but most of the scenes of this movie are just Jordan being drunk or having some sort of office party. D tier film. Poltergeist, 2014. Okay, I used to be absolutely terrified of this film when I was younger, and now that I watch it now, it's less scary. Yeah, some scenes were intense and scary, but it didn't scare me as much as it did when I was younger. B tier film. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie. 8 years. 8 years is how long we've waited for this movie. And finally, we got it, and it did not disappoint, despite what some critics and fans who care more about the lore than the actual games may think. I already discussed everything I love about this movie in my discussion video about it, so if you want to see that, the link will be in the description. But there were some stuff that I did not cover in that video that I would like to talk about now. For one, the characters are really great. While at first I wasn't too happy with the casting of both Matthew Lillard and Josh Hutcherson in the film, they did an amazing job. Next up, the soundtrack. I did not expect the soundtrack to be this good. That's pretty much all. This is definitely an A tier film. Into the Storm. Okay, if it's two things that I love in media, it's tornadoes and found footage / handheld camera styles. Mix those two together and you got the perfect storm of a movie. Into the Storm. For one, Freddie Benson for Mike Harley's in this film. And number two, the handheld footage style really fits this type of movie, even if they need to break it every now and then. A tier film. Fantastic Mr. Fox. This film was sort of weird. I read the original book a long time ago, and I don't remember Mr. Fox and the other characters' personalities being so bland, apart from Bogus Bunsen Beat. There was, however, this really funny scene which bumps it up a mark. C tier film. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This film could have been a bit better, but the movie was still great. All the characters are really great and I like how they are expanded upon in this film. Also, Miguel O'Hara is the sexiest and most intimidating villain in a movie ever. I also think it was good for it to leave off on a cliffhanger. However, the movie's music was not nearly as good as it was in the first movie, and I also think the movie dragged on for a bit too long. Also, the designs in some of the universes don't match the characters and wasn't great to look at. B tier film. Bedtime Stories. This is an underrated Adam Sandler movie if you ask me. It was pretty funny at times and had a very good story. B tier film. The Greatest Film Ever Sold. Another great movie made by Morgan Spurlock about the world of advertisement. Overall, I can't say too much about this film, so I'll leave it at a C tier. Step Brothers. Okay, this is one of the best comedy movies I've seen in a while. Will Ferrell actually feels like a kid stuck in an adult's body. Also, the ending is really cool. A tier film. Family Switch. One of the newer movies on here. Family Switch, a really good Christmas movie. Ed Helms is extremely funny as always. Not just Ed Helms, but also a lot of other parts of this movie are really funny. If you haven't seen this movie, then you should definitely watch it. A-tier film. Blade Runner 2049. Yet another amazing film. I've never seen any of the other Blade Runner films, but damn, this one was good. The cities are bland and sad, with the only color being advertisements. Then there is Joy, an AI hologram who feels like a real person throughout this movie. But when we see the big pink Joy hologram, we learn that she was just programmed to say all that stuff. They're all the same. Ryan Gosling as well does a fantastic job at portraying Joe. Despite the lack of emotion he often shows, you can still sense his happiness, sadness, and pain. A-tier film. Without Warning 1994. So for those of you who don't know, Without Warning was a 1994 film about aliens arriving on Earth. However, it is presented in the style of a news broadcast, and they actually used real news reporters for this film. It never had a theatrical release and only aired on TV, which tricked a couple of people into thinking it was real. Anyway, this film was actually great, and you can really feel the emotion in all the characters, and the reaction to finding aliens is really realistic. Also, the ending where they were all looking at the screen in shock to reveal hundreds of more asteroids heading towards Earth is insanely cool. If you haven't seen this movie, then you should 100% watch it if you're an Aliens fan. A-tier film. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Holy moly, this was way better than I was expecting. Puss is actually more of an enjoyable character in this film, but what really sells this movie is death. This guy is the most menacing and scary villain in a kids movie. His whistle is the most unnerving thing ever, and this scene where he puts coins over his eyes is terrifying. A-tier film. American Murder: The Family Next Door. Okay, so I was considering on whether or not I should put this on here, as it was a real tragic event that did happen. However, I did say that documentaries would be put on here, so here it is. Anyway, the doc did a really good job at showing what happened. A-tier film. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Okay, this is by far one of the best Christmas movies ever. Jim Carrey, as always, does an amazing job at portraying the character. The movie had some really funny scenes and a really good story. A-tier film. Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Honestly, I don't think this movie deserved the fall it experienced this year. The movie had some great acting and a great story. Also, one thing that I'm a sucker for is pop culture references, and this movie has a ton of those. Seriously, you could pause this movie at any time and find some sort of pop culture reference. A-tier film. The Lone Ranger, 2007. This movie is way too underrated for how funny it is. Johnny Depp did a really good job at playing Tonto. Also, the movie had a great opening and a fantastic ending. My only problem with the film is that it can drag on for a bit longer than it should have. B-tier film. Leave the World Behind. The newest movie on this list is Leave the World Behind, and honestly, it is a fantastic film. I can feel the suspense throughout the film, wondering if GH is to be trusted or not. Also, some scenes were really well shot. However, there is one thing I don't like, and that is the ending. I think it would have been best if the movie had ended here, rather than the opening to Friends. But anyway, it's still a really good film. A-tier movie. Bane. Yet another really great and funny film. Rowan Atkinson did a great job at portraying Mr. Bean. My only problem with the film is the pacing. It seems to be a bit all over the place at times, but other than that, it's still a good movie. B-tier film. The Grinch. Remember how I said how great the Jim Carrey one was? Yeah, well, sadly this one wasn't as good as I remembered. Yeah, the movie had its moments, however, it still wasn't that good. While I do think Benedict Cumberbatch did a pretty good job at playing the Grinch, his character is quite different. For one, he's much nicer in this film. 2, nobody is afraid of this guy. Like in the first movie, he walked into town and everybody was afraid of him. Nobody seems to care about him in this movie. Another thing is Cindy Lou Who. I hate with a capital H, Cindy Lou Who. She is so much more annoying in this movie. In fact, she's less of a main character. She's just there, and she barely interacts with the Grinch. Illumination really missed the mark with this one. D-tier film. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we present to you our last film for the year, Shrek. Yep, this is the last film that I watched this year, and boy did it not disappoint. For one, the film still holds up 20 years later. Shrek is still really funny, and I remember always laughing my butt off at this scene.
Do it. Okay.
Ah! No, Shrek! No!
Stop doing it. I'm doing
Oh God, I'm gonna die! I'm gonna die! Shrek, I'm gonna die!
Mike Myers really does a great job in this movie. A-tier film. Well fellas, that's the end of this video. Just so you know, this video is over 23 pages of script and 4 pages of just the list of movies. I first started writing the script all the way back in July, but for that, on the 27th of February was when I started writing down the movies. Anyway, if you want me to do this again in 2024 or 2025, well, good freaking luck trying to convince me. It feels so good to watch a film without having to worry about writing it down or thinking of a review for it. I am not doing this again. So anyway, fellas, this video took me a long time, so if you could like and subscribe, I would really appreciate that. Anyway, I'll see you guys later.
Open eye, feel the waves cut through me, hypnotized by the sound